I really think that the draft the Kansas City Chiefs just had could be extremely impactful towards the furtherance of the franchise that they have built. I think that it could be a 2022 level draft for this franchise. But even I have to admit that it is something of a tale of two drafts. Like a tale of two cities, right? It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. This draft could be the best of drafts or the worst of drafts. Josh Simmons might be an outstanding franchise level left tackle that you're getting at 32 overall and not having to pay very much for an entire 5-year rookie deal. Or he might not ever play a meaningful down in the NFL. Noel Williams, the cornerback, might be a man-eater at press cornerback, or he might not have the catch-up speed if he does get beat off the line. Ashton Gelati might be the juiced up, not that kind of juiced up, the juiced up edge rusher the Kansas City Chiefs have needed for quite some time to complement George Karlaftis, or he might just be the third Mike Dana on the roster, FAU being the second Mike Dana on the roster. Jalen Royals looks like he could be a great number 2 wide receiver in the NFL. There's also a reason that 31 franchises passed on him, and the 32nd franchise took him in the 4th round. Jeffrey Bassa looks like an extremely athletic linebacker that could solve the Chiefs' tight end woes. Kind of I always forget about him. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's my fault, but I think it's in the ether. Brashard Smith could be the electric running back the Kansas City Chiefs have needed for quite some time to pop off a big run every once in a while, or he might be too small to play in the NFL. Of course, every draft is like this to an extent, but there's one player that I didn't mention yet who might be the biggest dichotomy of this class. I am talking, of course, about Omarr Norman-Lott. We have so I brought up a couple different articles, and then I want to talk about the athlete that is. From Sports Illustrated by Daniel Flick, we get an article titled Predicting the Best Rookie on Every Team in 2025, subtitled Tennessee's Cam Ward, Las Vegas's Ashton Jeanty, and Jacksonville's Travis Hunter are the head of the class. For the Chiefs, the author chose Omarr Norman-Lott, saying it'll be interesting to see how the Chiefs' left tackle situation unfolds, as first-round pick Josh Simmons, who's still rehabbing from a torn patellar tendon sustained in October, competes with free agent signing Jalen Moore for the starting job. Norman-Lott, I almost said no more Oman-Lott, Norman-Lott faces no such questions. The Tennessee product is a potent interior pass rusher. With Chris Jones commanding extra attention next to him, Norman-Lott will have plenty of advantageous opportunities to disrupt opposing quarterbacks. That sounds true enough. It really does. We have further from Arrowhead Addict, this was after Omarr Norman-Lott was drafted, titled Chiefs Draft Omarr Norman-Lott to Fix Chris Jones' Problem They've Ignored for Years, by Christian Ainsworth, Omarr Norman-Lott's positional value and need. It's no secret that the Chiefs have struggled to identify a consistent pass-rushing partner to complement all-pro defensive tackle Chris Jones. While the team acquired defensive end Frank Clark in April of 2019, his impact in the regular season production was negligible. First-round pick George Karlaftis, drafted in 2022, has shown flashes of productivity, though he has not shown that he can be a dominant force that he was in college. Similarly, 2023 free agent addition Charles Omenihu has demonstrated disruptive potential, but has yet to put together a healthy and complete season for Kansas City. Equally evident is the team's long-standing neglect of the defensive tackle position. I would offer some argument there. Have they invested other first round or second round picks at defensive tackle? No. But for what they were going for, they were trying to find themselves a big two-gapper defensive tackle. Those guys don't go in the second. Those guys go where the Chiefs had tried taking them. Those guys you can pick up in free agency. And those guys sometimes you can get as a UDFA. It's just that none of them have worked. And that seems to be, if you look at draft histories, the nature of the position. Over the past 5 years, Kansas City has selected only one defensive tackle in the draft, Keandre Coburn, number 194 in 2023. This lack of but they acquired Tershawn Wharton as a UDFA. What was that? 3 seasons before? And if you already have a guy on the roster, look, Tershawn Wharton wasn't a superstar, but he was on the team. So too was Derek Nottie. I think that the lack of investment at defensive tackle is partially because of, I say it all the time in free agency, you can't manifest what isn't there. It's been a big deal in Kansas City for a long time that they haven't had a left tackle. Where were they going to get one? They draft 31st, 32nd every year. So I think that part of that with defensive tackle is kind of the same thing. Do you want to spend a second-round pick on a defensive tackle when the only defensive tackles you have on the board are fourth-rounders in your book? Well, no, you don't do that. You get better at other positions because that's where the value lies. So then, by the time the fourth round comes along, all the defensive tackles that you had as fourth rounders were drafted in the second and third, and they were reaches by other teams, but those guys got somebody who maybe plays 3 of the 4 seasons of their rookie deal and is on his way. I think that Brett Veach has proven that he drafts by value. He sets up his board, the front office sets up their board, the scouting department set up their board, and they follow that board. They will not break it. This lack of investment coupled with minimal activity in free agency has left the Chiefs' interior defensive line room alarmingly thin. The recent departures of Derek Nottie and Tershawn Wharton, who signed with the Jets and Panthers respectively, only exacerbated the issue. Entering the 2025 NFL Draft, the Chiefs' defensive tackle depth chart consists of All-Pro Chris Jones, situational pass rusher Jerry Tillery, aging run stuffer Mike Pennell, and the unproven Marlon Tuipulotu. Given that an effective pass rush remains central to defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo's defensive scheme, and considering the glaring need at the position, investing a valuable top 100 pick in a defensive tackle wasn't just warranted, it was necessary. So the question is Omarr Norman-Lott, who was a top 100 pick, a good value where he was taken? We have to look at who he is. Here we have some numbers from PFF. A pass rush grade of 81.6, but a run defense grade of 68.1. A true pass set rush grade of 88.3, nearly 90. A pass rush win rate of 18.9%. A run stop grade of 6%. Now, that's slightly over average, but still, it is not as great as the 88.3 pass rush, true pass set rush grade, or the pass rush win rate. I saw one statistic, one tweet, as it were, saying that his 18.9% pass rush win rate was the best among all defensive tackles. But I couldn't find further corroboration of that statistic, so I don't want to pass it off as if it is absolutely true. So here's the thing. They have found themselves a guy who has juice in the pass rush. They have found themselves a guy who is good at getting after the quarterback, at least he was in college. But he kind of suffers against the run. Can they make that work? Well, the linebacker core, led by Nick Bolton and Leo Chenal, seems to suggest that they have the linebackers necessary, that the defensive tackles don't have to do too terribly much run stuffing. They've gotten away with it for years now after the drafting of Nick Bolton with Chris Jones. So Chris Jones, early in his career, was kind of a pretty big liability against the run. Once Nick Bolton was drafted, once Nick Bolton became a starter, it wasn't all that big a problem anymore. Sure, Chris Jones also has gotten sturdier against the run. To what we attribute that, I have no idea. I can't figure anything out on tape, but he has been better against the run. And having a run-stuffing linebacker like Nick Bolton behind him and a massive freak athlete like Leo Chenal behind him as well means that kind of Chris Jones doesn't have to dot his I's and cross his T's in the running game. And he's even said as much. He has said that having Nick Bolton behind him really helped him out. So, is it possible that Omarr Norman-Lott's proclivities against the pass make him a transformative player for this defense? Yeah. If he comes into the NFL, I'm not going to assume that he has an 18.9% pass rush win rate, but if he has something on the upper end of pretty good as a pass rush win rate, all of a sudden, the offensive line can't just say, well, we have to double team Chris Jones, and if there's a third body available, throw him in there. The offensive line can't say, we're going to double team Chris Jones, and then we're going to sort of shift our blocking towards George Karlaftis. The offensive line can't do any of that if there's a second defensive tackle who is able to penetrate into the backfield and put pressure on the quarterback. The big question is, will Omarr Norman-Lott's abilities translate to the NFL? If there is any question about Omarr Norman-Lott, I think it's that. It's not his effort. It's not his want to. It's not his toughness. It's not his ability once he's free from offensive linemen. It's whether or not that translation can happen, because here is the RAS score on Omarr Norman-Lott. This is part of the reason I wasn't terribly big on Omarr Norman-Lott prior to the draft. Obviously, I run this channel, but it's not like I have 80 hours a week to do scouting leading up to the NFL draft. So I have to kind of bit and piece and pick and choose what it is I'm going to do and when. And when I looked at Omarr Norman-Lott's measurables, I kind of didn't scout him very much because that's not the kind of defensive tackle the Chiefs had been chasing. He is 6'1" 7/10" tall, sub 6'2", 291 pounds, sub 300. It's not like he's 298. It's not like he's 295. He's 291. He's nearly in the 280s. But he does have 10 3/4 inch hands. He does have 33 3/4 inch arms. He refused to do the bench press. But that height and weight, those are, as you see there, in the red. Those are what is called poor. Then you get to the speed numbers over here. A 5.15 40-yard dash. That's okay. It's all right. It's kind of confusing to see a defensive tackle be 291 pounds and have an okay 40-yard dash. A 4.93 10-yard split, not very good. But his explosive numbers, vertical leap of 31.5 inches and a broad jump of 9'5" those are good numbers. So the question, in my opinion, is, Does that electricity in his game translate against blockers who are bigger than he was seeing in college, who are better and more skilled than he was seeing in college, and depth charts that are deeper than he was seeing in college? That, in my opinion, is the big question when it comes to Omarr Norman-Lott. But if he can translate those skills to the NFL, this could be an absolutely destructive weapon for Steve Spagnuolo and this defense. Look, the previous article talked about George Karlaftis never proving that he was never being consistently great, right? But he's been consistently pretty good. Chris Jones, of course, is great. You have now Charles Omenihu maybe playing a full 17 games. We'll see. There's still time. And you have Ashton Gillotte, who, in my opinion, is not Mike Danna, but Mike Danna plus. I think he is a little twitchier than Mike Danna. I think he's a little faster than Mike Danna. I think he's a guy that's going to be able to turn the corner better than Mike Danna. So, all of that said, if the entire defensive line, left to right, can be what it has been, simply plugging in Omarr Norman-Lott should unlock a whole lot of pass rush that could get the Chiefs back into the mid-50s in their sack numbers. And if that happens, well, the Chiefs win Super Bowls when that happens. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel. So consider hitting the subscribe button, stick around for more, and as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.